Okay, so to continue our discussion on audio, I wanted to go to the basics, and the basics of audio would be microphones. Okay, so let's just break it down to a simple definition. What does a microphone do? Anybody? You read the text? The three of you that read the text? Do you remember?
Yeah, a microphone, like it picks up sound, right?
It picks up sound, but there's a more...
Turns sound into energy.
Turns sound into energy, or transforms sound into energy. Good. Right. Okay. So I don't know if that means anything to you, but that's the basic definition, and I'll get a little deeper into that. I'm not going to get super sciencey on this lesson, but I am going to show you guys a video later on of exactly what's going on inside a microphone. But in a sense, a microphone and a speaker work exactly the same way, but a speaker's doing it in reverse. So if I were to just say that, knowing this one, if this is all you knew, and I said, so tell me in one sentence what a speaker does, what would you say? Almost.
Turns energy into sound.
Right, in reverse, turns energy into sound. Okay, so that's basically what's going on, and realistically, your ear works exactly the same way too. And you could say, well, what, I don't have energy, but you do have electrical impulses, and it's all working the same way. Without getting super technical, inside the microphone, there's a diaphragm, a little thin piece of plastic or mylar, or I don't know what it's made out of in different microphones. It's different elements or different things. But when the air, here, hold your hands up like this, and just talk. Hold your hand up close to your mouth and talk. Do you feel that tapping on your hand? Okay. So that's the movement of air, right? So the diaphragm in the microphone is like the palm of your hand. It's feeling that pressure, that air pressure. And as that's happening, that diaphragm is moving, and attached to that diaphragm, there's a coil of wire that sits around a magnet. And as that diaphragm moves that magnet over top of the, moves that coil over top of the magnet, it's producing electrical impulses. On the reverse of that, the speaker is taking that same electrical impulse, sending it through a coil and a magnet, pushing a diaphragm of a speaker to move that same air. So it's just amplified, that same thing. But when we talk about sound, we want to break it down into frequencies. And there's kind of three frequency categories we talk about in sound: lows, mids, and high frequencies, okay? And when I say low frequency sound, we're talking about like bass, kick drums, and a kick drum is the thumpy bass drum. In most of the music that I guess you guys listen to, that would be the yo beats mister part. Mid-range, stuff like trumpets or clarinets and French horns, and I don't really deal a lot with that kind of music, so for me, in my world, that represents guitars, synthesizers, vocalist, the human speaking voice. That's all mid-range stuff. Okay, and then the high frequency sounds, flutes, piccolos, soprano vocalist, all things that I don't do a lot of musical things with running sound for that. So in my world, it's usually cymbals from a drummer. That's what I think of when I hear high frequency. Okay, why do we need to know this when talking about microphones? Is because that's going to determine what mic you're using for that particular thing that you're trying to amplify, that you're trying to put a mic to. So another decision that you might have to make when choosing what microphone you're going to use is, am I using a wired microphone? Am I using a wireless microphone? And they both have advantages and disadvantages, but one thing that's pretty consistent is the quality of mic is directly related to its cost, meaning you get what you pay for. If I had two microphones up here, Austin, and I said, this one costs $5, this one was $200, you don't know anything about them, which one would you tend to think was the better microphone? Yeah, the $200 mic. And that you're probably right. Unless I got that mic like off of eBay and it was, sold on the black market or something. I don't know. Maybe that might be different. Wired mics are generally less expensive than wireless. You could run an XLR cable 200 plus feet with no signal loss. and it will work fine. You might want to go longer than that, but you would need some kind of inline amplifier, which is just a little box that hooks between the two XLR cables, and you could actually run longer than 200 feet. Most wireless mics usually have a range of about 200 feet, like a really good one. That's usually like the range on it. So it's not really we can't use wireless because we're running this long or whatever. It's usually just other factors that we'll talk about in a second. If you're using wired mic, you need to tape cables down anywhere that it might be a potential tripping hazard. And when you're done, you should be wrapping up and storing the cables. And we're going to go over wrapping cables again because apparently no one knows how to do that because Josh was trying to straighten out the cables because they're all just kind of thrown in a pile. And we'll go over that. We're going to go over taping down cables and wrapping cables because these are important things that you should know how to do. Wireless mics, again, are more expensive than wired mics. No cables to trip over and coil and store. You will have a short wire that goes from the transmitter or from the receiver to the whatever you're plugging it into. Okay, this is one of our wireless mic systems, and some of you have used this. Okay, by itself, it's not going to do anything. It'll receive the signal, but if it's not plugged into anything, it doesn't matter. You're not going to hear it. I always use this story of a DJ I worked with. You guys know I film weddings. I was working at a wedding reception, and she was a new DJ. I don't think she'd been DJing that long. And she was good at DJing, but she didn't know a lot about audio equipment. And she had just purchased a brand new wireless microphone. And she was getting ready to go, and I asked her, I was like, are we ready to start the reception? Like they have introduced the bridal party and stuff. And she's like, I can't get my microphone to work. And I'm like, well, I could help you. I know stuff about audio. So I'm going over the normal things. I'm checking the mic. I'm like, the batteries are good. It's not that. I said, where's the receiver? She's like, oh, that little box. I said, yeah, where's that? And she showed me, and it was there, and it was plugged in to power, but there was no cable running to her mixer. And I was like, your receiver's not plugged into your mixer. She's like, well, the guy at Radio Shack told me it was wireless. And I was like, hello, I'm Earth. Have we met? But she had no clue. But she just didn't know. I guess she never worked with wireless mics before. And then, I gave her a short lesson on how wireless mics work, and it was all good. So there is a wire. It's not completely, there's no, it's not like there's no wires anywhere. Wireless technology, as of today, there's usually a receiver and some kind of wire to hook it up. And then on the other side of that, you have a transmitter. I don't know, where's that microphone you had before, Joseph?
Should be there.
No, it should be here. All right, I'll just use this one since I don't know where the handheld one is. So this would be the mic, and this is the transmitter. So it is here. I'm sorry. Blaming you for stuff you didn't do. All right, so both of these are a transmitter and a microphone. This one, the microphone's actually separate from the transmitter. This one on the handheld mic, it's built right into the microphone. So this part of it is really only the microphone part. The rest of this is the transmitter. So any wireless system has those two parts to it. Any question on wireless? What do you think potential problems of wireless could be? If I'm using a wireless mic, what might be a potential problem?
Lose signal.
Yeah, you could lose signal. What's another? Wireless is kind of everywhere in everything. So what?
Another signal could disrupt yours.
Yeah, you could have interference. And a lot of times it's weird. Because these things operate on different frequencies than your cell phone wireless or router, like internet wireless. But they could still interfere. And things like radios from airplanes, they talk to radio towers and stuff. All that stuff interferes. I actually have, I don't know if it's this. Yeah, it's this exact wireless system. And we got it, the one I got was, the selling point was that if it detects interference, it'll switch channels on both the transmitter and receiver automatically. Before you had to manually change both sides to channel B or channel C or whatever. This one, if it senses interference, it switches channels. So I thought, okay, this will always work, no problem. We were using it, and I was getting this clicking sound. It was cutting in and out. I'm like, what is that? Here, Wi-Fi, there's two kinds of Wi-Fi. Some of you know this. There's 5G and 2.0 whatever gigahertz. Well, the 2.4 gigahertz was actually not interfering in a traditional sense, like it wasn't picking anything up. It was just cutting it in and out. So we had to set our router that we use to only use the 5G, and then it fixed it. So like there's all kinds of problems with wireless. So I'll use wireless when I have to, but if I had a choice and wired is not a problem, I would always go with wired. Although you have the cables and stuff, it's just more reliable for that reason. We're using wireless right now, obviously for the shows, we always use wireless mics. It's just kind of the convenience, and the fact is when we had wired mics, students would forget they were wired, and they would I can't tell you how many XLR cables we just ripped apart, because people would get up and run away from the set and it would rip. So that's why we use wireless. So there's pros and cons to both of these. Any questions on wireless? You guys all kind of understand how that works. Some of you, how many of you have used, besides the ones we use for the show, the other wireless system? Okay, so a couple of you have used it. So you know, you're starting to learn just from mistakes what to do and what not to do. Okay. All right, so in addition to wired or wireless mics, you have other choices in the type of mic. There's a dynamic mic, which this mic on this picture is. The reporter mics you guys use, those are dynamic mics. Actually, the radio room mics are dynamics. A lot of people think they're condensers because of the size of them, but they're actually large diaphragm dynamic mics, which there's not a lot like that. Those ones that we have are kind of any radio station you go to, I bet they have those mics. But usually, dynamic mics are usually used for stuff like speech, vocalists, things like that, all mid-range sounds. I use this mic to mic guitar amps. So they're usually used for mid-range type sounds. Dynamic mics are better because they're more rugged. They'll hold up to abuse better. You could probably get them in a rainstorm. They'll still work. They could be dropped. Believe me, I had one of these mics literally since I'm in high school. I still have it. The top has all kinds of dents in it, but the mic still works as good as the day I bought it. And you'll see this particular one a lot. It's a Shure SM58. This and its sister, the SM57, have been industry standard since they've been invented. And the design has not changed, other than maybe some aesthetics of the windscreen stuff. It's the same microphone they made 50 years ago. Okay, condenser mics, also called an electret condenser microphone, usually are a better sounding microphone. They're a little more fragile. They do need battery power or phantom power in order to operate. So if you can't put a battery in it, either you need to turn the phantom power on from the mixer or from the camera. And if you don't know what phantom power is, we'll talk about that at another time. But just without knowing anything, if I say you need phantom power for a condenser mic, that's really all you need to know, that it's something that powers condenser microphone. And it's usually supplied by there's a couple ways you could get it. The mixers, most mixers have a phantom power switch either per channel or the whole mixer. Sometimes it will just turn it on for all the channels. The cameras, if it's a professional camera, there's a switch somewhere to turn phantom power on. You could put a battery in it, or sometimes they even have a little external box that just provides phantom power. So that's when you might use a condenser mic. They come in a lot of different varieties. You have lav mics or condensers. You have a large diaphragm studio mic, and that other microphone is something you would use for I use those mics to mic acoustic guitars. They could also be used as overhead mics for drum kits, things like that, choir groups, things like that. A ribbon mic, they're extremely high cost. They're extremely high quality. They're great for stringed instruments, vocals, very smooth sounding. You won't find them in radio stations too much anymore. Back in the radio days, before any of us existed, when television wasn't a thing, that was probably the type of microphone they had. They still use them in recording studios, higher end recording studios, are places that do a lot of recordings of symphony orchestras. There are some probably pop singers that really like a ribbon mic. Probably even some of them don't even know why. They just know it's the most expensive mic and they want to use it. They're extremely fragile. They're susceptible to moisture, so even like your spit coming out of your mouth when you're singing. So usually they have, in addition to a pop filter, like a spit guard, because even that little bit of moisture will damage the ribbon, and the mic will be worthless. And we're talking like entry level, like $900, maybe if you're lucky. You cannot handhold them. They're so fragile that even just moving them while you're using it can break the ribbons, and it'd be garbage. Non-professional mics found on low-end camcorders. Built-in mics are usually like, we're not talking about the mic mounted on top of the camera. We're talking about the one like built into any device. Is not going to be a good quality microphone. The ones built into your phone, things like that. They're going to pick up everything. In the case of a camcorder, they're going to pick up, if you zoom, they're going to actually pick up that noise of the servo motor going, and they'll pick up breathing a lot more. And just avoid using them at all costs. There shouldn't be any reason in here you guys need to use a low-end microphone. We don't really have any other than maybe the one built into the camera, and even the cameras we have, the built-in mics, are probably at least decent quality. But still, don't use them unless you have to. A boundary mic, have any of you ever seen one of these? You have. Where have you seen it? You know? Yes. Okay, so that's one. I placed these. I use them for the piano. Their pickup pattern, which we're going to talk about pickup patterns, is hemispherical, which means it kind of, picture a hemisphere. That's what it is. So for a piano, I kind of stick it right in the middle. Because in a piano, there's all these strings, and like the sound comes from, I just think they work really good for piano. The only other time I use one is like one time I had to film these focus groups, which where they would just get to see a product or something, and they'd review it, and they'd just talk about it in a room. And these people were all sitting around a table. So instead of trying to mic them all, I just put a boundary mic right in the middle of the table, and it picked up the audio good enough for what they needed it for. And I film dance recitals and tap dancers. I stick it on the stage, and it picks up the sound of taps. So they're the only times I use those mics. But they could be used like on a table or something like that. That'd probably be maybe you guys would want to use them for that. I've also used them on like a low budget film. We actually had a scene in a living room, and we hid it in the plant to pick up everybody instead of a boom mic, because we didn't have a boom mic operator, and it worked pretty good. We did ADR, so it wasn't like we were using that audio anyway. Parabolic reflector mic, shaped like a satellite dish. Someone could hold it, and it's very directional. It's used a lot on football fields, and it picks up sounds from the players. So when if you ever watch a football game or like a soccer game, and you could hear like the people like actually tackling each other, that's why they have somebody with a parabolic reflector mic. Just like a quick discussion, why would you think an audio technician would need to be very quick on the mute button for the input of a parabolic reflector mic pointed at the football field on a nationally televised game?
Well, when it's nationally televised, there's like a
right, and perfect, yeah. If a player would say something that they shouldn't on national TV, so that person has to be really. And if you listen, I've already been watching football and heard stuff, so you got to be like. They usually actually probably even have it on a little bit of a delay, which just gives them like a couple seconds. If they hear it, they could actually mute it after the fact and still have it not go out to the air. Okay. Finally, the last thing that would determine what mic you're going to use for a particular purpose would be what kind of pickup pattern that microphone has. And we're going to break it down into two main categories and then some subcarriers of the second category.
Is one of them like unidirectional?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a second. First, I want to talk about omnidirectional, and when I say pickup pattern, that's talking about where that microphone hears from. An omnidirectional kind of hears from all sides equally. So an omni mic, for short, would hear from all sides, and there might be a reason you want to use that. Like if you have one stick microphone that's an omni mic and you're trying to pick up like 5 or 6 people. Like one time And I always give you guys actual examples because I think that's the best way to illustrate it. The chorus had like 5 members singing the national anthem. And I really only had the time to set up one mic. So I just put an Omni mic by the center person, kind of had them in a U-shaped around it and kind of picked them up all equally. So normally, most of the time that I could think of, I'm going to use a cardioid mic, which kind of hears from the front of that mic and kind of resists sounds from the sides. And there's a lot of reasons you might want to do this. The reason it's called cardioid is because the pickup pattern is what? If you turn that pattern upside down, what would that shape be?
Heart.
A heart. Yeah, and heart, cardioid. If you ever heard cardio, you're doing cardio exercises or you're a cardiologist. That's how you remember that. A cardioid mic is talking about the pickup pattern being heart-shaped. Okay, it picks up sound primarily from one direction, resists the rest of those sounds. Under that, we kind of have hypercardioid and supercardioid. Okay, and it's just the shape of, you can see this graphic here that the shape is just going to be more directional and reach a longer distance. Usually, if we're using a supercardioid or hypercardioid mic, we're talking about a shotgun microphone. This is a shotgun microphone. And you can see, when you see it on the little stand, you can see why it might be called that, because of the way you kind of aim it like a shotgun. Sometimes these mics are mounted on top of the camera. If you take this shotgun microphone and mount it on a fishpole, then you have a boom mic. So that's all. A boom mic is not really a type of microphone, it's how it's applied. So when you put a mic on a fishpole or boom, and you boom that mic, that's what a boom mic is, and that's probably the way you're going to use this the most, other than camera mounted on top of the camera. You don't have to use a shotgun mic for a boom mic. In television, they used to use something called a pencil mic. Just a small little, I mean, you could guess what it looked like. It wasn't quite as small as a pencil, but it kind of shaped like that. But you could put any mic on a fishpole and use it as a boom. But you would probably be using the shotgun mic because of how directional and sensitive it is, okay? That's really all I have on microphones. We're going to get into some other audio things like EQ, some more basic things like taping down cables, repairing cables. I'm going to show you guys how to solder, tape down cables, coil cables, things like that. Does anybody have any questions on microphones? Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.